Welcome to the INFOWARS Nightly News. It is Tuesday, June 2nd, 2015, and I'm Leanne McAdoo. Here's a look at tonight's top stories.
Tonight, does the just passed Freedom Act make you feel any freer? Do you think the surveillance state will obey the Fourth Amendment now? Then look at the secret surveillance flights by the FBI using a shell corporation. And gun control advocates dress in prison orange as they beg government to take away freedom. Your freedom. All that and more on tonight's INFOWARS Nightly News.
Well, the AP today is reporting about surveillance drones that the FBI has been flying across the country. Now, they report that the FBI is actually operating a small air force with scores of low-flying planes across the country. These are carrying video and, at times, cell phone surveillance technology. And also that all of this is being hidden behind fictitious shell companies that are fronts for the government. Sounds legit. So, and of course, they also point out that all of this surveillance is going on without a court order. Who needs the NSA? Now, according to the FBI, the planes aren't equipped for bulk data collection, but they do point out that the planes are able to capture video, so they could be capturing video of unrelated criminal activity that's going on that they could use to, hand over for future prosecutions. Some of the aircraft can also be equipped with technology that can identify thousands of people below through their cell phones that they're carrying, and they're using Stingray technology, which we reported on is often attached to planes. It tricks your cell phone into thinking that it's connecting to Wi-Fi when it's actually connecting to this Stingray device, and they are able to track and surveil innocent people. So here we have another conspiracy theory becoming conspiracy fact. Now, the FBI did ask the AP not to release the names of these shell companies because they said the taxpayers will then be saddled with the bill when the government has to create new shell companies to hide all of their activities. And the AP declined to acquiesce to that request. They did identify 13 of those shell companies. Now, we did report on some of the surveillance planes that people were reporting seeing flying above Baltimore just in the days following that rioting there. It was all based on one tweet from a Baltimore resident that said, "Hey, is anyone noticing these surveillance planes that are flying around?" And then one of his Twitter followers responded with a picture of the plane and its flight path. And that whole tweeting unveiled a previously secret multi-day campaign of overhead surveillance that was being run by city and federal authorities. The FBI said that they did loan those planes to the city of Baltimore. Now, an independent journalist actually broke this story about a week ago, and he gave a lot of detail. There was more than 100 planes. This is Sam Richards, and he reported on more than 100 planes, many of these shell companies. He broke it down quite nicely on a pastebin where he's attached all of this detailed information. So one of his friends spotted one of these surveillance planes over Minneapolis, and that's what prompted him to do this investigation. And you can see there that he mapped about 100 of the aircraft and traced regular flights that they were conducting over major American cities. He outlines how each of the planes is registered to a fake corporation with a 3-letter acronym for a name. And he did all this using flight tracking websites, and he tracked the airplanes flying over Minneapolis, Dallas, Chicago, Seattle, Baltimore, and others. And so you can see their flight patterns there. The planes will spend several days to a week circling over a given city, and then they're rerouted to another site. So they're not doing a really great job covering up the fact that they are conducting this surveillance over cities because people can check their flight paths there, but any other information that really gives the details of why and what they're doing isn't readily available to the public. Now, Jay Stanley of the American Civil Liberties Union describes this nightmare scenario for drones. He's basically saying this right here is leading to our nightmare scenario for drones, which could give wide area mass surveillance and location tracking of entire cities and towns. Now, we're supposed to believe that the NSA's phone snooping program is on its last legs because the Senate passed the USA Freedom Act today. But of course, based on what we know, there's a number of programs out there we don't even know about. This is basically sleight of hand convincing us that our freedom is intact. The USA Freedom Act rewrites the sweeping Patriot Act. It bans bulk collection of Americans' data and adds more transparency checks to the secret court that oversees intelligence gathering. But based on all this reporting of these surveillance planes, they've already got all of these programs set up. They don't need permission. They're doing all this without a court order. And we're probably not going to find out about any of these programs unless we have another whistleblower coming out of the system. So all sorts of programs out there that the government is using to bolster the surveillance state.
This is a debate over the Bill of Rights. This is a debate over the Fourth Amendment. This is a debate over your right to be left alone. Justice Brandeis said that the right to be left alone is the most cherished of rights. The right to be left alone is the most prized to civilized men.
Boston, Chicago, Houston, Washington, D.C., Phoenix, Minneapolis, Seattle, and Southern California. The FBI is watching you. Illegally. The Stingray device surveillance equipment given a Fourth Amendment pass in order to shield the knowledge of the devices in order to remain secret, according to the FBI, is being used in at least 30 cities in 11 states. So our rights need to be violated in order for them to be protected. The logic unravels immediately. Meanwhile, the FBI is using their increasingly corrupt and Stasi-esque taxpayer-funded spy planes to watch, listen, and record anybody that happens to be in their unconstitutional flight path. And in true mafioso style, the planes were registered with fake companies in order to accomplish their illegal activities unheeded. Of course, nowadays it takes brave citizen journalists like Sam Richards, aka Sam Renegade, to expose the ugly truth the whitewash media is increasingly dropping the ball on.
You know, part of the problem with this issue, Alex, is you have these fundamental principles about freedom and privacy and surveillance being couched in very technical questions around, you know, how the bulk data collection works, and people can't be expected to understand that. You have to know who to trust.
People can't be expected to understand that. You have to know who to trust.
Renegade discovered how each of the planes is registered to a fake corporation with a three-letter acronym for a name, such as OBR Leasing, which doesn't seem to otherwise exist as a viable business from internet or public record searches. Richards, aka Renegade, reveals that dozens of these aircraft from front corporations like FVX Research and KQM Aviation are registered at the same Bristow, Virginia post office boxes used for planes which are openly registered to the DOJ. Jay Stanley of the American Civil Liberties Union describes their nightmare scenario. He says, "I wrote recently about Argus, the high-flying drone technology capable of capturing super high-definition video of a 15-square-mile area and automatically tracking all moving vehicles and people within that area. I pointed out that this makes possible our nightmare scenario for drones, wide-area mass surveillance, and location tracking of entire cities and towns." The FBI claims that they use the flights to assist with local law enforcement, like during the Baltimore riots after the death of Freddie Gray. Reports tracked down a pair of planes that circled the city during that time. At the time, the FBI confirmed to the Washington Post that it had provided aircraft for the city's police department for aerial imagery of possible criminal activity. Those flights are what finally spurred the AP investigation. The Wall Street Journal reported last year on a program from the U.S. Marshals Service, another wing of the Justice Department, which used the cell phone technology to scoop up information dating as far back as 2007. The FBI recently issued a statement defending their surveillance. It says, "The FBI uses all tools and equipment and conducts all investigations in accordance with the Attorney General guidelines." Talk about passing the buck. Would it be too much to ask to just throw the FBI, DEA, CIA, and the current members of Congress on the scrap heap of U.S. history and start over at this point? It's as plain as the nose on our faces. Justice and corruption mix as well as the BP oil spill. John Bound for INFOWARS.com.
Well, teachers complain and chaos reigns in St. Paul after the school district there spend millions of dollars on white privilege training. So the taxpayers there in St. Paul spent nearly $3 million to the group Pacific Educational Group. Now, this is a San Francisco-based organization that's trying to help public schools deal with achievement and disciplinary issues involving Black students. Now, it claims that the American education system is built around white culture, tradition, and social norms, also known as white privilege, and this is to the unfair detriment of Black students. PEG believes that Black students are only going to be able to achieve if school curricula are customized to meet their cultural specifications. It also rejects the concept of using suspensions or expulsions to discipline Black students. So basically, they've seen all sorts of program implementation, like moving students with behavioral issues into mainstreamed regular classrooms. Student suspensions were replaced by timeouts, and school officials started forgiving or ignoring violence and other unacceptable behavior. So the result has been general chaos throughout the school district. Far too many students are out of control because they know that they have no real consequences for their actions. So this is how students are being taught to handle the real world, that there are no consequences for your actions. Obviously, this is creating a really unsafe school environment, which is causing a lot of families to flee. And according to this report, 2/3 of those families are from low income and families of color who are fleeing. So it's not as if, it's a bunch of white people going, oh my gosh, it's so dangerous. These are families who are sick and tired of an unsafe school environment for their children. Now, I think that's pretty ridiculous. I mean, we've reported before about how teachers aren't allowed to talk about peanut butter and jelly sandwiches because there are cultures that don't grow up eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. But to ignore violence and hitting and things like that, that is when I got to draw the line. Now, the Wall Street Journal is kind of reporting on this rise in crime and sort of ignoring violence and no consequences for people who engage in criminal activity. They're touting this as the Ferguson effect. They're reporting on a startling number of the rise in crime. It's a new crime wave after 2 decades of decline. They listed 7 cities that have seen noticeable and sometimes shocking spikes in murders and other violent crimes in just the past year. And of these 7 cities that were worthy of note, Breitbart is pointing out the fact that all 7 of these cities are run by Democrats, and with the exception of New York City, all of these have enjoyed one-party rule for decades. So obviously, there is a policy issue there, and that's what they're kind of pointing out. The rise in crime is also, of course, part of the left's Cloward and Piven strategy, which we've reported on time and again. It further empowers central government by stoking despair and fear. And, so what's the left's answer to this? Well, even though Baltimore has seen the most violent May in 15 years, gun control advocates are wearing orange today. It's this big hashtag campaign on Twitter. They're wearing orange to promote gun control, which, as we know, the only people who are truly affected by gun control are law-abiding citizens, because nearly every player you can see there of the New York Mets baseball team is dressed in orange. Never mind the fact that shooting incidents are up 500% in East Harlem there, but gun laws work. Now, many are pointing out that violent criminals wear orange too, and they're probably also very likely supporting this decision to disarm Americans. There's a quote that comes out of this article. It says, "The laws that forbid the carrying of arms disarm only those who are neither inclined nor determined to commit crimes." So in other words, a disarmed population is at the mercy of those with arms, just like the prison population is at the mercy of armed guards. So quite fitting that anti-gun activists are going to dress like disarmed prisoners to push gun control. So just like that doesn't make any sense, so too is the notion that the TSA is protecting Americans from terrorism by treating us all like potential terrorists. Well, now an internal investigation of the TSA has revealed security failures at dozens of airports, the busiest airports in the nation, in fact. Undercover investigators were able to smuggle mock explosives or banned weapons through checkpoints 95% of the time. Now, of course, that's not shocking to those of us who have been reporting for years about the TSA being nothing more than security theater.